Hi guys, welcome to this FrameWorks tutorial. In today's session we're going to be making a countdown using a React component that I found online. Hopefully it's going to demonstrate how easy it is to bring in a React component from an external source such as a website, bring it into Framer, and then using Framer's powerful tools like frames and stacks, we can extend it, and we can use Framer's property controls as well in order to customize the component. So we're just going to have a quick look at the different countdowns available on the Framer store. Then we're going to look at searching for a simple React component online, add it to Framer, and then customize it using the property controls. So let's get started then. So the reason I decided to build this was I did have a quick search for some countdown timers on the Framer store, but there are not many options, unfortunately, when it comes to countdown components. There is this one available, but there are no customization options really available to change the font size, the color, or the countdown from. So I'll just show you this one quickly. So if we go to the insert menu and we type countdown, if I can spell it properly, you can see that there is this one. And if we insert it, we can set the number of seconds. This is great, but if we preview it, that works, but we don't have many customization options here. So I thought it was a good opportunity to do a bit of learning and do a bit of reading. If we go back to my keynote slides a second. So what I did was I searched for React Countdown in Google, and these were the results that we got. So let's just do that now. So you can see there's plenty of results. I'm sure there's hundreds and hundreds of different countdown components online, but I was drawn to this one, how to create a simple React countdown timer. Now I'm not going to go into the details of this post. You can read this post yourself, but yeah, it's a very good post. It's how he got to the final solution. So he went through several iterations before he got feedback and iterated until he ended up with this version at the end here. So how do we get this into Framer? Well, it's actually pretty easy. So we can literally copy almost all of this code here and paste it into a new code component. So let's go ahead and do that now. So if we go to Framer, do a new file, create a new code component, and let's call it countdown. So I'm just going to do that now. I'm just going to go over to code. By the way, if you don't see the code menu, you can go up here and make sure that it's turned on. It's hidden by default. So if we go create code file, I'm just going to call it countdown. Again, if I could spell things correctly. So you can see this is the boilerplate code that Framer gives you when creating a new component. So I'm going to go back to keynote slide a second. In fact, I'm going to go back to the article. So you can see here we've got a bit of code. Now what we can do is we can copy all of this code and bring it into Framer. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy the code inside the function here. I'm going to leave the outermost elements. I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to go back to Framer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select this area here, and I'll explain why I've left the bits at the top in a moment. But essentially we're replacing the return from the default component with this and the return from the code. So if I just go and paste that in there. And then what we can do is we can actually see what this looks like straight away. So if I go back to layers, go to insert and type in countdown now, if I go back here. So you can see that the countdown from my project, straight away if I insert that, we've already got something happening, which is pretty cool. But actually I don't want that bit of text there. I'm just going to remove countdown because all I really want is a number countdown. Okay, so this is a good start. Now then, so we've done this bit. We've copied this section of code here. We've done this part. So it's not very customizable at this point. You know, what we want to do is we might want to change how long it counts down from, what's the font size, the font color, all these kinds of things we can do using famous property controls. Now, if I go to the next slide, so to customize our timer then, I think we need 3 property controls here. We need a countdown from, which is going to be a number. We need font size, which is also going to be a number. And we need font color, which is going to be a color property control. And Framer provides us with these property controls by default when you do a new code component. You can see here it's given us text and tint and on tap. We're not going to need these, well, we're not going to need most of them for this component. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete that. So if I just go back here, I'm going to go and edit my code. So you can see we've got the 2 property controls already provided by default here. I'll go back. I'm going to delete those property controls. If I switch back, you can see that I'm going to have no properties now. I'm actually going to delete them from up here as well. I'll explain why in a moment. So our component should still work, we just don't have any controls available. So if we go to the next slide. So what we need to do then is we need these 3 different property controls in our panel. We need 2 numbers and a color. So where would I find that? Well, the best place is to go on the Framer API page. Framer API property controls. If we have a look on there, you can see that we've got number as an example. So I'm just going to go and copy that bit of code. And I'm going to flip back to Keynote, not to Keynote, to Framer. And I'm going to add that in the property controls area that I deleted before. I'm going to call that one font size. No, I'm going to call it this one countdown from. And I don't want degrees, I'm going to delete this one. I don't want the steps to be in multiples of 0.1, I want them to be multiples of 1. And what was the other one that I needed? I wanted countdown from, I wanted font size. So I'm going to go ahead, and that's also a number, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and paste this here. I'm going to call that one font size. Default value for that is probably going to be font size of 30. Maybe the default value for the countdown, I'm going to make it 30. And the last one that we needed was color, so font color. So if I go back to the property controls page here, you can see there's an example for color, which I'm just going to copy and paste. I'm going to call that font color. Default value is going to be white, that's fine. So we've got our 3 property controls there. If I switch back, you can see now we've got, well, this one's a little bit hard to read. I mean, you can stretch this out here to see it, but let's rename it. I'm just going to rename that countdown. And to do that, most property controls actually have title. So here I'm just going to write in countdown. And actually font size, I'm gonna put one there as well. I'm just going to say font size with a space. And the same for font color. Okay, so that's looking a little bit better now on the right. Great, so we've got our property controls, but obviously nothing is changing when we change things in the properties panel. And that's because we haven't hooked up our properties to any styling or style object. So normally when you do a default component, there's no styling going on anywhere. And do you remember as well that in the text that I deleted earlier, we had the property controls names repeated up here. So I'm just going to put that up here. I'll explain why in a moment. Countdown from, font size and font color. I will explain this shortly, the reason why I've put these up here as well. Countdown from, font size and font color. Now, if I just switch back to my Keynote a moment, let me go to this bit here. So in order to customize the style, we do actually need a CSS style object. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this example that you see here. There's lots of different ways of writing styling in React. I'm not going to touch on those today, but this one works pretty well. It just allows you to insert styling inside your React component. But it's quite key where you put this, so I'm just going to copy this now. I'm going to switch back to here. I'm just going to put it at the top to begin with. And I'm just going to ignore this a moment. I'm going to write here font size 30, the color is going to be white. Let's not worry about the font family for now. Let's just have, so we've got a simple style object that just says font style. But you'll see if we switch back, again, nothing's really changing here. It's because we haven't told our component to reference this style object in any way. So you can see that when I pasted this code from the web, it's put various divs here. So if you wanted to wrap some styling around this style object, you just need to add it in here. So you could write it this way, font style. Now if we switch back, you should see that the font size is going to be a bit larger and it's going to be white. So you can see that that is having an effect. Now that's fine. You can use divs in components just like you can in normal React components. But in this instance, I'm not going to use divs. I'm going to delete them and replace them with frames. So just you can think of frames and stacks in Framer as they have superpowers. So it lets you do things much quicker than you would in a div. So you could very quickly center things. Obviously in stacks you can stack things vertically and horizontally. So I'm actually just going to delete these divs and I'm going to replace it with a frame. I'm just going to delete all the divs actually. I'm just going to put frame here. And if we switch back, you'll see styling will change. We've got this blue box. That's because frames by default they do put this background there. So we can remove that quite easily just by going background none. And that's great. It's not actually centered though in our box, so this is another reason why frames are so good. You can just type in center. Straight away there we have our countdown centered in a box. So this is pretty cool. Now we can add our style object back into this just like we had earlier. So we can write style equals font style. If we switch back, now you can see that our style has affected it. Now the problem is though that our property controls are still not doing anything. So actually where you place this style object is pretty key. So you can see then that if I were to try and change this, so rather than the hard-coded values here, I want to replace them with my property control values. So rather than font size 30, I want them to be property controls dot font size. And the same for color. I'd like that to be property controls dot font color. You can see that we get some red underlines, and that's because our style object cannot find the property controls that we've referenced here because they're not inside our function. So what we can do is we can cut that style object out and we can put that inside our function, and then straight away if we switch back you can see that our property controls are affecting our countdown. But there's one thing missing, the countdown from. You can see if we change that to 80, we preview this, it's actually not doing anything. That's because there's one more bit that we've missed, which is there's a countdown that defaults to 60. You can actually see if we look in this code here, the value is here. So in order to replace that, we can simply change it with our property controls dot countdown from. And there we have it. So if we preview this now, it starts coming down from 80. And that's all there is to it. So thanks for watching. That's the end of this tutorial.